Welcome back to Hoochos. Today on Hoochos, I'm going to be setting up, time-lapsing, and discussing this. This is a floating raft hydroponic system. It is a passive, power-free hydroponic system that takes very little maintenance, is perfect for beginners, as well as being extremely productive. Okay, so today you will need some extruded foam paneling. Now get the extruded foam because it's consistent and will give us consistent buoyancy. Jiffy peat pellets. You can use any method you like to hold the plants in the system. I'll just be using Jiffy peat pellets and bamboo skewers. So we'll be using the bamboo skewer technique that we've discussed in previous Kratky videos of holding the plants above this system. This is going to allow us to plant seeds within this system and hold the Jiffy peat pellets. You can use reusable net cups that you can just add grow media in, whatever's cheapest for you, whatever you've got lying around already perhaps. There are multiple ways to hold plants within this system. You could even use the cotton wool method of propagation. We'll also be using some seeds and hydroponic nutrient as well as enough water to fill up the system. And finally, we are going to need a kiddie pool. It's a square kids pool. And the reason I've gone for a square kids pool is because the paneling I have is square. This kids pool is 1.22 meters by 1.22 meters. And this paneling is 1.2 meters. So I have 10 mil on each side to work with. And the width of the paneling is 600. So with two of these panels, I can cover the entire surface of this pool. That means that all I have to do is cut holes in this paneling and place it on top of the water within this pool, and it will float and also cover the entire surface area of the nutrient. Okay, so this is the greenhouse at the moment. I'm actually going to be setting up the kids pool over in this corner. This is a nice bare patch of space that I don't get much use out of. So I'm going to level out the area and we can set up the pool. I'll do my best to provide a link in the description via this pool or something similar to this pool. So just jump into the description if you can't find something like this. Now I am slightly concerned about the light retardant properties of this pool, but we will find out how well this keeps out light. Okay, that is the reservoir set up. So I've got most of the base level. I just needed to raise the feet up on this side because it dropped off just before the feet. So I've got the reservoir nice and level now. I'm going to fill it up with water. And on the box, it actually gives me the water capacity. So the water capacity is 365 liters, which is plenty. I'm going to fill it up with water and then we can add in our hydroponic nutrient and see how the rafts float. Okay, so while that's filling up, we are going to prepare the sheets that we're going to lay over the top of the system. This is going to depend on the plants that you want to propagate within the system. You don't want to overload the buoyancy of these sheets. So this is probably going to be limited to a leafy greens system. So I'm going to mark out my spacing on these sheets. Now the literage of the kids pool is going to give me a rough idea of how many plants I can supply a nutrient to. So I will divide the literage by 4 because 4 is the amount of liters that each lettuce requires to grow according to Kratky's journal article where he outlines his technique, and this is the number that I'm going on. So 365 divided by 4 is 91.25. Let's just call it 90. That's 45 hole spacings per sheet. So that's 9 rows of 5. Let's see what that looks like. So that's 1 row every 10 centimeters. It's actually perfect. This is incredible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Okay, so our pool's filled up, and just because I just know I'm gonna have an issue with the sizing, I'm gonna try this raft out. You can see how the pool gets pulled in. Just lay that on top. kind of perfect in the middle. That's good. Gonna have to do it by eye. There we go. I could have gone a little bit easier on the edges there. I can just take a slither off this edge. Okay, very cool. And I'm gonna do the same for another sheet. Oh, look at that. How good is that? That is, that's perfect. Oh, I'm actually really happy with that. Okay, cool. I don't always get to be smug, but feeling pretty smug right now. All right, so now we can cut our holes in the sheets. And as you can see, I've laid out a grid. Now this is a 10 by 7.5 grid, and it should allow me to fit 45 plants on each of my sheets of extruded foam. Okay, so I'll be using a 44mm hole saw for my 44mm Jiffy pellets. This is definitely going to depend on your choice of grow media, but the 44mm hole saw also fits a 2-inch net cup rather snugly. Net cup, peat pellet. So while I'm doing this, I'm actually going to start rehydrating some Jiffy peat pellets. So I need 90 Jiffy peat pellets, which I'm just going to lay into these trays, 9/5s. And I'm just going to add water into these. Okay, so the second half is easy because we can just use the first half as a template. We can then rather easily emulate it. All right, now I have copied my sheet. I'm gonna wash it first, and then we're gonna lay it over our system and see how it looks. Float these on top. Not bad. Not bad at all. How good is that? There's not much movement. We've only got some small gaps at the side. Look at that. I think this is gonna work well. So now we can add in our hydroponic nutrient. Okay, so here I'm just using my Campbell's Diamond Spec T and NitroCal. I'm just working my way through the last of it that I've got. And we're making enough for 365 liters. I'm just gonna be halving that, maybe rounding up a little bit. I'm gonna add in 170 grams of each. I'm going half strength here for my nutrient because it's a tomato nutrient. If you were adding in a lettuce nutrient, you would just go full strength to the manufacturer's instructions. I've actually got 190 there. I'm just gonna see how that goes. And I'm gonna add hot water into that. So that's the NitroCal, and it's just dry hydroponic nutrient. So this is the other elements, and this is the calcium nitrate. So you can see the difference in the texture. And I've got about 190 of each, and we'll see how we go with that. It's a bit more than half. I'm gonna add in hot water to these, and I'm gonna stir it up. Okay, so for my water and nutrient combination, I need to adjust my pH up 1 factor. I've got the appropriate amount of pH up for my situation. This is going to offset the amount that my nutrient takes my water down after my nutrient is added. First, I'm going to add in the calcium nitrate element. I'm just going to pour it in like so. I'm going to mix it up, and then we can add in our other elements. This is my Campbell's Diamond Spec Tea, and we can mix that up as well. Done pretty well here. Pretty bloody pleased with myself. So our pH is 6.3 and our EC is about 1. Don't you just love it when things go right? I'm hoping that this system turns out as well as it started. So now we can add in our Jiffy peat pellets and plant out the system. And a slightly more convenient way to hold the peat propagation pellets in the system, these are just toothpicks. And I'm pretty sure they'll be large enough to allow us to pierce through our pellet and hold our pellet in place if we slide it into our system. And as you can see here, it sticks out on the bottom, so it's definitely going to be touching the water. And we can start to plant out our system. So I'm going to do a mixture of things, some tatsoi, some red oak leaf lettuce, some rosy pak choi, some cos lettuce, and some spring onions on either side. And that's going to give me a nice harvestable spread. It gives me a nice salad bowl essentially. So I'm going to go and plant these out now. And there's nothing special about the way that I'm planting these. I'm not even going to use a propagation dome. I'm just coming along, sprinkling my seeds in, and that's it. Now we can set up our time-lapse cameras and see how it grows. And what a fantastic result. Now, there are a couple of things that I'd change about this system, but let's just take a minute to appreciate how much salad is in this 1.2 by 1.2 meter area. There is more than enough greens to supply a large family pretty much the year round, I reckon. If you planted this out properly and rotated rows, you could definitely have this one system provide enough greens for an entire large family. Now, some things that I'd like to point out. The spring onions have been crowded out by the rest of the plants. I should have thinned out the plants. As you can see in the time lapse, there's just too many plants per plant spacing, and the plant spacing itself is probably a little bit close together. However, I would like to see how this system performs when you thin out the plants. I have literally not touched this system at all. I went away for 2 whole weeks whilst this system was growing as well. It is up there with the ginger and turmeric system for low maintenance. I'm going to do my best to show you how much nutrient it's used. So if we have a look at the raft, you can see that, well, for starters, algae is not really a problem. The water is clear except for the algae around the edges, and our water level is about here. We have used about 1/4 of the water in the system. There is a little bit of algae around the edges, but I would not worry about that at all. I'll try and show you what it looks like when you pull up a plant. So I'll pull up some bok choy. There it is. So you can see that the bottom of our Jiffy Peat pellet was wet. This is actually a really easy system to harvest from because you can just pull them out like this and then replace it with another Jiffy Peat pellet really easily because the roots aren't getting too intermingled. So I can just pop that back straight back into the hole where it came from. What I would like to do is lift this system up, lift this raft up and show you what's underneath. I'm gonna do this. Look at that. That's really cool. You can see the water isn't actually green at all. And the roots themselves are incredibly white. Like, have a look. They are healthy roots. And you can see there, that's the water. The water and nutrient is really not being affected by the light at all. And I'll do the same for the other side. So that's what it looks like underneath. Wonder if I can lift the whole raft. Yeah, have a look at that. That's pretty cool. So you can just lift this out and move this to wherever you want to harvest. Not bad. It's quite heavy actually. I'm pretty happy with this system. And the overall cost was $40 for the pool and $10 each for the foam on top. So about $60 for the hydroponic system itself, and then the running cost, which is just the cost of your nutrient, which is negligible really. I love this system. There are no moving parts, no pumps, there's no air stones, there's no electricity. It's not cracky, so the plants are relying entirely on the nutrient solution and that grow media for oxygen. All things considered, this floating raft hydroponic system has performed wonderfully. And if you wanted to increase productivity within this system, you might even consider adding in air stones to the reservoir underneath. But my aim here was to create a system which relied on no power whatsoever and was as simple as possible to set up. If you like this style of system and the method for holding the plants in place, check out this video, which is a cheap alternative cracky technique where I use buckets and coolers to grow in a very similar fashion, but in a smaller footprint. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hoochos. Happy hydroponicking, and I'll see you next time on Hoochos.